All right, so we're going to focus on the writing and making decisions. And you have to make the decisions about the character, the structure before you begin writing. That's the brainstorming part of the essay. And I will tell you that from teaching high school, it is the one step that kids always skip because they think it's useless or it's boring. And every time a student skips the brainstorming, they struggle with writing an essay. If you do the brainstorming, you will do much better on your essay. That is a proven fact. Okay? The way I'm going to teach you to brainstorm doesn't mean you have to brainstorm this way every single time. It's just a suggestion, but you do need to brainstorm. There's my students. Okay. The first thing that you need to understand is how you're going to be graded. There are 4 categories: focus and organization. And the word focus should remind you of our first lesson where we talked about focusing. It's one thing. Development. Okay, we've talked about development frequently. Development is, is it detailed imagery, those things. Language. Okay. And then conventions, that's grammar. You're graded on a score of 1, 2, 3, and 4. This corresponds to your TCAP as well. So 1 would be below basic, 2 would be approaching, 3 is you're on track, and then 4 is you know how to write the essay. So right now, at this time of the year, based on last year, we're hoping for the kids to hit that 3. Okay. So what is the actual difference? In a 3, you're going to be given a task. And did you adequately establish a context and a point of view? So what that means is you're not going to go back and forth between second, third, and first. You're going to be writing a narrative through the first person point of view, and you need to stay in first person. Is it organized? Okay, so first, second, third, next, those transition words. And does it have a conclusion? Development. Notice under development that it says the word adequately means you've done it. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It means you've done it. And you have techniques, that's plural. And so you need dialogue, slowing down or speeding up, imagery, and I have not gone over reflection yet. So I'm not too terribly worried about that one, but you may actually do that anyway when you write the conclusion because it's just reiterating your theme, but we'll go into more details there. To get that 3, you need at least 2 of those devices, and it can be any 2. It doesn't specifically say you have to have this one or this one. It just says you have to have at least 2. Okay. Do you have details from the stimulus? Stimulus means the writing prompt. You are rewriting the story from the mom's point of view, but you're going to have to go back to the original story, and that's why your textbook is open to page 84 right now. You're going to have to go back to the original story and incorporate quotes from the actual story. Okay? So if you talk about her being hardworking in your story, you would copy the line from the original text. Does that make sense? Okay. And that you understand through descriptive details, okay? The precise picture. These are our vivid words and characterization, okay, that we've been working really hard on, and I've been really impressed with how much progress we've made with that. So this is good. The language, I'm actually more worried about these last 2 than I am the development. Precise language, okay? Sensory language, that means you don't want to be vague. Everyone went to the store. Who is everyone? You need to be more specific. Sensory language, things that you can hear, smell, touch, those things. And we're still struggling with that, but I think you can do it. It just has to be one of those, okay, I know I have to have it. Syntactic variety, this is the one I think that's going to get you. Just because it's not really in the standards to be taught. They expect you to already know it. And from your writing, I haven't seen very much of that, but syntactic variety means that you use semicolons, hyphens, dashes, parentheses, and the looks on your faces are like, what are those? I'm going to go back over it, okay? And then varied transitions. And then the last one to pass is consistent command of grade level conventions. This means commas. Do you know how to use commas? Do you know how to capitalize a letter? And I know you're thinking that that's silly, but do you know how many times I have to fix I when I'm grading your writing? And how many times I have to put capital letter at the beginning of a sentence or a period at the end? And those are the things that they expect you to know in the 8th grade. So it's not expecting the high school ones, but at the 8th grade level, you should have a basic understanding of capitalization, punctuation, names are capitalized, cities are capitalized. If it's my mom, it's not capitalized, but mom went to the store is capitalized, okay? And those type things. Oops, I jumped ahead. Okay, that's all right. At the bottom of, okay. All right, so let's look at an anchor paper. This is a real paper from a student who answered the prompt, okay? So you're going to see how the state gave her the grade. Well, I don't know if it's a she, could be a he. You're going to see how this student received the score that he or she did. Okay. So follow along with me as I read. As I read, I want you to annotate any details that stick out at you according to the rubric. So if you see dialogue or if you see sensory details, things that are like, oh, hey, this is one of those things I was supposed to have. Amber shifted nervously in her thin jumpsuit. It hugged her slim frame, but only added to the feeling she was being suffocated. She was currently being fitted into her spacesuit, which was taking too long, and it had run off to occasionally get it, leaving her with her thoughts. What would the moon be like? Would she be able to complete her first mission? Was colonizing the moon even possible? Here it is, said Mrs. Williams, the head of the team. Her and 3 other people were wheeling in a bulky white spacesuit. Amber stared at it. That was hers? A warm feeling danced through her chest and a small smile formed on her face. That was hers. Captain Amber, are all systems go? A male voice riddled with static asked. She raised her mouth to the speaker and spoke in a confident voice. Yes, sir, all systems go. Do you have the flag? Yes, sir. Are the containers for the waste fuel ready? Yes, sir. Prepare for takeoff. She gripped her seat as she heard the engines rumble. This rumble rose into an ear-splitting roar, and she felt the rocket take off. She squeezed her eyes shut, just like she did when she rode. I hate it when it records at that. I lost my place, hold on. A roller coaster. Well, this did feel like one big roller coaster. The roaring lasted for at least 5 minutes, and then it slowly got softer until it sounded like a happy cat's purr. She heard the cheering of the team on the speaker. Congratulations, Captain Amber. You are on your way to the moon. Prepare for landing, the male voice said. Excitement flowed through her veins. She was going to land on the moon. Years after Neil Armstrong stepped foot here, she was going to be the next to walk here. As she internally celebrated, the rumble made its appearance again, and she attempted to plug her ears to block the deafening noise. She then felt the sensation of going down in an elevator and she knew that she was about to land on the surface of the moon. I want to give you the answer. Please put on your helmet and prepare to leave the spacecraft. She grabbed the glass dome they called a helmet and slipped it over her blonde head. A hissing noise, followed by a loud click, let her know the helmet was secured and that it was pumping oxygen into the suit. She then grabbed the American flag. There was already an American flag on the moon, but this one was to celebrate that they were in the process of colonizing the moon. Walking towards the hatch with clunky steps, she breathed deeply. You can do this. This is what you have dreamed to do. Don't let everyone down. Another hissing noise, and the hatch began to open. This is your moment, Amber. All the work, all the training has led up to this. You can do it. The hatch opened, and she was looking out at the gray landscape of the moon. Her breathing hitched. It lived up to her expectations and so much more. Gray vastness yawned out before her, littered with small rocks and boulders. The sky was a velvety black, with sparkling stars smiling down at her. And she could see Earth. It looked like a shining blue and green marble, just hanging in the dark abyss. Love for her planet consumed her, but she shook it off. She had a job to do. She began to walk and was not surprised by how light her body felt. She had trained for this by walking underwater. She then began to explore. The ground was hard, but her footsteps were imprinted in the dusty soil. Her eyes flicked back and forth, searching for a good spot to plant the flag. Then she saw it. The original American flag was planted here so many years ago. It was still standing, but it was a little lopsided. She assumed that Armstrong hadn't been able to plant it that deep, and the engine blasted from the ascent module had blown it over a little. She walked, or hopped because of the gravity, over to it, and with some effort straightened it. She then pulled out the new flag, and with her telescoping crossbar, she planted the flag deep into lunar solar, right next to the flag that made history. Good work, Captain Amber. You have completed your first mission. Have you filled the gas tank with the reused waste fuel? Yes, sir. Just finished it now. Give me a second. Notify us when you're ready for takeoff. Yes, sir. She tromped her way back to the control room. She had just filled the tank with the fuel that had been made from her biological waste, her packaging waste, and her food waste that she had generated during the trip here. Now it was time to go back home, discuss her findings, and then come straight back, ready to live here with other human beings. Ready for takeoff, sir. Engines are ready in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. As the countdown continued and the familiar rumble filled her ears, pride surged through her. She was going home. But soon, Earth wasn't going to be her only home. Okay. All right, a couple things we want to talk about first, after I find what I did with my pencil. You have to have part of the actual story in your text. So when we look at this story, okay, let's see if we can figure out anything that probably came from the story rather than her making up. In the original text, at the beginning, it talks about how she had to be helped into her suit. That's all it said. Okay, but look what she does with it. The team helping her put on the suit had run off to actually get it, leaving her with her thoughts. So that's showing, hey, you know what, I read and understood the story. So she took that detail and made it hers. Does that make sense? Okay. This part right here where it says, was colonizing the moon even possible? The whole point of, if the introduction of the article talked about, they were going to the moon to see if they could colonize it. And look how she made it her own. The next part of the story says that her suit was brought to her. That's what it says in the story, but look what she takes with that. She makes it into dialogue and makes it her own. So instead of saying she gets into her suit, this one is the suit was brought to her, this is what it looks like. So she created the dialogue here. Notice that there are some mistakes though. This is graded on a rough draft. That means that, and really the mistakes that I saw, and you can tell a little bit from the copying pasting from Microsoft Word, there were some spelling mistakes. Okay. There were a few period mistakes. She started a sentence with the word "and" 3 times, but those were very minor. Okay. Graded as a rough draft, because it was just really those 2 things, they kind of overlooked them. All right, what would you give this story on a scale of 1 to 4? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Good, so she definitely has these things that stand out at you. Sensory language, strong vocabulary, vivid verbs, dialogue, and development. One thing to keep in mind is this was 8th grade. So it's not perfection, it's progress from 7th grade. Okay, so they understand everything's not perfect. Let's see what they gave her 4. She got a perfect score on this paper. Okay, because it actually brought in context. It stayed in the same point of view the whole story. Okay. Did she have other characters? She did. Okay, so whether she used the ones from the article or if she actually added them in without having read the full, both articles, it's hard to tell. But you know that she has other characters. Conflict. She has a conflict. Okay. It uses a number of techniques. Okay. And you absolutely hit on those with what you said. She had them. Okay. When she did the 5 or the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, that was pacing. Okay, so she had pacing too, in addition to the ones we talked about. Language. Notice that it says consistent and sophisticated. We saw different types of sentences there. Okay. Yes, there were a few grammatical mistakes if we look on conventions, but it says grade level. Okay. Errors are minimal. Okay. Minor spelling that do not interfere, meaning if the reader can still understand the story and it doesn't take away, then you're fine. If it takes away from the story, then points will be deducted. So the question is what takes away from the reading? An example. I have an author that I absolutely love, but she does not know the synonym for excellent. She should. I emailed her. Okay. But she doesn't. I counted it up. In one chapter, she used excellent 17 times. And the chapter was only like 6 pages. I had to download the book, convert it, change the word excellent, just because I couldn't concentrate on the story. And that's what it means. If the reader can't concentrate on the story because whatever mistakes you had take away from it, that's when points are deducted. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so now we're going to work on what you're doing. We're going to practice with the story of Gordon. For that. So our objective is we're going to look at one of the paragraphs from the story of Gordon, and we're going to rewrite it from Gordon's point of view, because that is your prompt, is you're going to look at the mother in My Mother's Garden and rewrite it according to the mom's point of view. So the first thing we have to do when we brainstorm is we have to figure out what was Gordon thinking at this time. So you can just say it aloud. You don't have to, we'll write it on your paper too. But what was Gordon thinking when he was being teased? I'll go ahead and read you the paragraph so you don't have to pull out your story. Back in the classroom, I walked past Gordon's desk. He looked up at me, and the eyes that had just a few minutes earlier were filled with despair now expressed a hint of hope. It was the first time that I had seen him smile. And although I was unaware of it at the time, it was a first for me also. It was my first act of compassion, an act that happened in a fleeting moment and lasted for a lifetime. So from Gordon's point of view, let's rewrite that. So at this time, what is he thinking? That. Confident that someone likes him, good in his own way. We want to add, when we're rewriting the story, we want to talk about these things, that he's confident and good. What narrative technique that we've studied can we use? There's dialogue, there's slowing down and speeding up, focus is actually required. Vivid words, sensory details. Which one do you think would probably be the best technique to add this information into your story? You're going to want to explain using sensory words here. That's really the best technique. I don't know that dialogue would be effective for this one because you're really kind of showing that he's confident and good. All right. What was he feeling at the time? I think that's kind of what we did kind of with the first one. In this case, I think thinking and feeling are the same thing because he would have been thinking to himself what he was feeling. And so I think with your answers, you guys would kind of got that. Do you think we could use dialogue and sensory words, or do we want to stick with just sensory words for the feeling part? You can definitely have a character talking to himself. The only problem that I see with that is when you write it, you have to make sure, you know how taglines are sometimes optional when you go back and forth? When you're talking to yourself, you're going to have a tagline. Because otherwise, the reader's going to go, who's he talking to? So you would have to do Gordon thought to himself. And then you would use the dialogue conventions that way. Okay. If you do use dialogue and you say like Gordon thought to himself, Gordon's not going to answer himself. So it would just be like that one line. Okay. What do you think he would say to his tormentors? Because one of them just walked past the desk. So what is something Gordon might say to them? Definitely, please stop. When you do that in your tagline, it's really important that you use the description word, loud voice, soft voice, strong voice, because that's where you're going to show that you understand the story, okay, using that description word. Can you think of anything else Gordon might say to one of his tormentors as he comes through? Okay. And how would your tagline read? Tagline is the part that comes after the dialogue that's who said it. So in the first one, the tagline was, Gordon said in a soft voice. So for this one, leave me alone, what would the tagline be? In a frustrated voice. Okay. Does anyone think that it's possible he could do please stop or leave me alone and your tagline could read Gordon said softly to himself? Almost like he's not quite confident enough to say it to his tormentors, but he's saying it aloud, but just not so they could hear it. Because you can make that in your tagline. Leave me alone, Gordon said, but too softly for his tormentors to hear. So it still gives you that, right? The dialogue. But it's staying true to Gordon's character of what you guys said, that he's feeling good, better, but it's not yet strong enough to actually confront. What do you think he wanted to say or wanted to do when they were teasing him? So in the paragraph before, when they pushed him down and they called him Gordon Crowhopper and he's laying there in the grass and he's crying, what do you think he wanted to say at that point? He probably wanted to yell. Okay, good. Anything else? Push them back. Absolutely. Because that's what any person who's bullied, right? Is they want to give back to their tormentors the same thing that happens to them. So those are definitely things. How do you think you could do that? So go back to our original question, what narrative technique? How, if you were to rewrite this story, could you add in Gordon actually yelling back or pushing back? What would be the best technique? So the best way to do these would definitely be strong verbs and vivid language. Okay, your sensory details. And this ties back to the lesson I gave where I said that using strong verbs and imagery counts in multiple categories, and so it's good to use those. You have a handout that I gave you on verbs. Please use that when you're writing, okay? All right, any questions on this part? Okay. All right, together, let's rewrite this. Back in the classroom, I walked past Gordon's desk. He looked up at me, and the eyes that just a few minutes earlier were filled with despair now expressed a hint of hope. It was the first time that I had seen him smile, and although I was unaware of it at the time, it was a first for me also. It was my first act of compassion, an act that happened in a fleeting moment and lasted for a lifetime. Okay. When you rewrite this, is the I going to be the same person? No. Okay. So when we rewrite it, we're pretty much going to ignore this part because that has nothing to do with Gordon, right? That's all about the current narrator. From Gordon's point of view, what do you guys think we could say here? Back in the classroom. That's the setting. So we have to set the setting. Where's Gordon at? At his desk. As I sat at my desk. Okay. What else? Okay. What does he see, feel, think? So this is good. As I sat at my desk, I started to feel a sense of hope. I saw one of my tormentors walking past my desk. I looked up at him and curved my lips up slightly and said, "Thank you for helping me up." And again, there's a couple of grammatical problems. Okay, repeated a word there. This is an awkward sentence, but it doesn't really take away from the paragraph, so it would probably be overlooked. Because remember, 8th grade. So now we're going to look at my mother's garden. And we're going to begin our brainstorm. Okay, so what you're going to do is let's shoot for 15 minutes. Okay. And I want you to go through, and the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to figure mom out. You can't write a story from mom's perspective without knowing mom. I did leave you a lot of space, but that's because I have some kids with really big handwriting. It doesn't mean you have to put like 50 things on here. But who is she? You know, what is her age? What do you think she looks like? Does she like or dislike anything that you can think that would help with the story? Characteristics, though, you are going to need to make sure that you address that one. Because remember, that's on our rubric, okay, as showing in order to get that passing grade. And that characteristics are tied to what you see in that story. So you're going to want to make sure that you have some good brainstorming about who mom is. Just to remind you about the basic plot of the story that you can kind of refer to, from the daughter's point of view, what was the story? So this one's like 1 or 2 sentences. It's to kind of keep your mind focused on the plot so that you don't wander off in lots of different places. Okay. And then from the mom's point of view, what this is going to allow you to do is organize your thoughts. so that you don't accidentally start telling the story from the narrator's point of view. You stay with mom. And so being able to go back and look at this and go, okay, the daughter is talking about how she wants to fit in at school. The mom is talking about, or from the mom's point of view, the story is about how hard she has to work, blah, 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 blah. So basically it will help you stay on task and organized. From the mom's perspective, what is the conflict? Not the daughter's. So how is that conflict changing from what the daughter thought the problem was to the mom? Because we're focusing on mom here. Okay. And how do you think mom felt during the story when all of these events are going on? Okay. And what do you think mom was doing during this time? And these here are all based on the passage. Okay. There's enough information in the passage to tell us this information. I would recommend that if you say she felt frustrated here, page 85, paragraph blank, and that you highlight that line in the story so that when you're writing your story, you know how to work it in. Okay. You're not going to be copying that line into your story. You're going to do just like what we practiced, but it will allow you to focus, to not get off topic. Okay. What do you think mom said to her daughter when all this was going on? Because that's not really in the story. I mean, there was that one little part about the garden, but that was it. So what do you think else? What else did mom say? Because mom was living with her daughter. Question. Are there any other characters that you can develop in the story? For this one, you're going to look at who does the mom interact with, okay? And instead of it being told from the daughter's perspective of, oh yeah, she talked to this person, you're going to go, okay, this person, what's he like, because it was all male, what did he say, those type things. Okay. While you are, or after you're done doing this, you're going to make sure that you have a good handle on the prompt, okay? And how you do that is to pull apart the prompt, organize your thoughts, and we're not getting to the write your essay today, okay? So here's your prompt. We read 2 stories that involve relationships between a mom and a daughter. Rewrite the story, My Mother's Garden, from the mother's perspective. So let's pull it apart. What do? You rewrite it. Okay. So this tells you you're not making up your own story. You're rewriting. Okay. What are you rewriting? A story. So you know it's narrative. Okay. And what is the narrative about? Her mom's perspective. So when you pull apart a prompt, what you're doing is you're making sure you actually answer the prompt rather than writing just some random story. Then you're going to organize your thoughts. And I have given you this as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to fill this out. Okay. What do you want your story to be about with theme? Okay, the main idea basically of the story. We talked about, from the daughter's perspective, it's about fitting in and those things. But from the mom's perspective, it's not going to be about fitting in with your friends. So what do you want yours to be? Where's the setting going to be? What's the problem going to be? Any other characters? Okay. What 3 things is your character going to have to address? And these are each going to be a body paragraph. Okay. What's going to happen that kind of goes, okay, it's starting to resolve the conflict? What's going to happen at the end of the story? Okay. And we know that the protagonist is the mom. Who or what is the antagonist? And then so go ahead and you will fill out those papers. Looking at this, I think it's going to take you longer than 15 minutes. So let's start with 20 and probably have to renegotiate from there. Okay. All right, go ahead and get started, and I will walk around and look at what you're doing.